Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep into Hadith 11, which focuses on communal conduct and the care for orphans. If you're studying for the O-Level Islamiyat 2058 syllabus, this is an absolutely essential topic. We're going to explore the core Islamic principles of how we interact with our community, and more specifically, how we are commanded to treat the absolute most vulnerable members of our society. It's a vital part of understanding your faith beyond just the basics. So let's jump right in. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with Hadith 11 and the two fingers analogy, define what an orphan actually is in Islam, break down the core teachings for Part A of your exam, look at Part B, which is putting those teachings into action, and finish up with emotional support and counseling. Starting with Section 1, Hadith 11, the two fingers. This really serves as the ultimate motivation. I and the man who brings up an orphan will be in paradise like this. And he pointed with his two fingers, the index finger and the middle finger. Think about that imagery for a second. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, gave us this powerful, undeniable visual. By holding up his index finger and his middle finger right next to each other, he showed the incredible closeness a caregiver will have to him in paradise. Now, it's every Muslim's ultimate desire to be close to the Prophet in the hereafter, right? By tying that massive reward directly to the care of an orphan, this hadith makes dedicating yourself to this cause not just a duty, but a highly motivating and achievable goal. Moving to Section 2, defining an orphan in Islam and setting our parameters. Before we talk about putting all this into practice, we need to know exactly who we're talking about. In Islam, an orphan isn't, say, a 60-year-old adult who has unfortunately just lost a parent. Rather, we are specifically talking about a young, dependent child who has lost their father before the age of puberty or understanding. This is a child whose primary protector and provider is suddenly gone before they have the physical or mental maturity to navigate the world on their own. Which brings us to Section 3. This perfectly aligns with Part A of your Islamiyat 258 Question 1 framework, Core Islamic Teachings, specifically looking at the humanitarian framework. Now, this contrast is absolutely fascinating. On one side, we have standard ritualistic worship, reading the Quran, fasting, salah. And on the other side, humanitarian action. Islam is not a religion based solely on rituals. Yes, those rituals are crucial, no doubt about it. But Islam equally stresses benefiting humanity. You know, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was a profound humanitarian even before the very first revelation. He was out there caring for widows, the unfortunate, and orphans. Every single Muslim is expected to follow that exact example, to step outside their ritual worship and actively benefit humanity. And honestly, who needs that humanitarian action more than orphans? They are often the absolute most downtrodden, overlooked members of our society. Picture this: a father passes away, and immediately all the adults in the family are consoled by the community. But the grieving child? Their emotional needs are sadly frequently ignored. One day, their father is there providing for them, and the very next day, an uncle might be yelling at them, completely oblivious to their immense grief. It happens in our own families, and it happens on a massive scale globally, like in Bosnia, leaving countless kids incredibly vulnerable. This supporting hadith just hits the nail on the head. He who wishes to soften his heart should stroke, or in other words, place a comforting hand over the head of an orphan. We live in this fast-paced, highly materialistic world, always chasing the next worldly gain, and that can unfortunately make our hearts a bit hard. But here's the cure. Simply placing a physical, comforting hand on an orphan's head doesn't just soothe the child, it literally softens the heart of the caregiver. It grounds you. All right, Section 4. This is where we tackle Part B of your syllabus, Teachings into Action. How do we practically implement this framework today? At the macro level, governments and major institutions have got to step up. Places like Eddie Homes, Roshni Homes, and the Chipa Foundation rely heavily on community aid. Governments need to grant them essential, sustained funding so they can operate at their best. But it goes beyond just funding orphanages. Systemically, we really need to arrange widespread foster family systems, kind of like what you see in foreign countries. Placing a child with a foster family gives them a real, warm, homely feeling, which is infinitely better than just institutional care alone. But listen, even if you don't have deep pockets or government power, you as a student or volunteer can take action right now. Go to an orphanage and spend some real quality time with these kids. Play a game of cricket, do some art with them. Or let's say there's an orphan in your extended family who's backing out of their studies because their widowed mother can't afford tuition. Step in. Tutor them in math yourself. Buy them some toys. Or if your family's going out for a fun afternoon, invite the orphan child along. Decrease their sadness by simply showing up. We also have to actively remember that this umbrella of care extends further. Children abandoned in the cradles of the Edhi Foundation, or kids whose parents have separated and who end up stranded in an institute or a Darul Uloom, require this exact same level of dedication. They might not technically be orphans by strict definition, but their vulnerability is exactly the same, demanding the same humanitarian response and respect. Finally, Section 5, Emotional Support and Counseling, Healing the Hidden Wounds. So what about the emotional wounds? We've talked about food, tutoring, and shelter, which is great for basic survival. But how are we actually helping these kids process the massive sudden trauma of losing their primary protector? A child who has lost a parent is dealing with an invisible, crushing weight. This is where professional psychological counseling and dedicated emotional support become absolutely mandatory. It's not a luxury. We have to actively take these children to professionals, counselors, psychologists, who can give them a safe, guided space to talk about their loss. Managing their future grief is a critical part of setting them up for a stable, healthy life. We literally cannot just feed them a meal and expect their psychological trauma to magically disappear. So, as we wrap up this explainer on communal conduct and Hadith 11, I want to leave you with one defining question for your own life and faith. Are you going to be content just practicing the standard rituals, or will you step up, take real humanitarian action, and strive to be just 2 fingers apart from the prophet in paradise? The choice and the action is entirely up to you. Thanks so much for learning with me today.